So I know this is only the 5th book that I've read in the Cosmere, but this is definitely the most interesting start. It's the one that's got me the most hooked earliest in the book. And this one actually sadly doesn't have parts, even though all the ones I've read before have. So I decided to stop just before chapter 8. And in this edition of the book, that is about 87 pages in. And if you're new to the channel, what I do is I'm going to read each section and try and make predictions on what's going to happen next. And one thing that I love that we've gotten so far from this book, from Warbreaker, is it's a juicily complicated and mysterious magic system. There seems to be 2 parts to it. Obviously, you have the colors aspect, and I have no idea how that really ties in. And then we also have the breaths. The breaths, although seems to have some logic behind it already, and I'm waiting for a Sanderson info dump, which will be very welcome. It seems like it's going to be a more, hopefully a system where there's a little bit more ambiguity with the colors aspect of things. And then I'd imagine the breath ends up being very, very logical. I know that there's things called heightenings, and I haven't looked at the back of the book yet. I kind of want to organically find out about those as we go through. And overall, I just feel really excited to learn about this magic system. The previous books I've read in the Cosmere are the Mistborn initial trilogy and then Secret History. And although I very much liked that magic system, it was a bit dull and straightforward for me, if I'm honest. It was, and I'm about to say it was dull, and then I'm about to say it's fun. It was still a fun magic system, and I enjoyed how logical it was. But it did take away some mystery because we basically got given all of the information for that magic system right at the start in one big info dump, if my memory serves me correctly. And although there was different magics to tie into it, and that did make it a bit more, mysterious, and how they interacted with each other was really fun to find out. And there were a lot of secrets along the way. But I don't know, the fact that this one is colors, and colors tend to be associated with art a lot more than like metals. Metals are often more just associated with like industry and industrious things that make sense. I think the fact that it's colors tied in will, it's giving me a lot of hope for where we're going to go with this story, basically. And not only do we have colors and breaths, but we have more. We have the lifeless, we have the returned, which are very, very interesting, including our Godking. And I always enjoy a good Godking. There was another story I read, which was the Night Angel trilogy by Brent Weeks, and it had a Godking, and it was an incredible character. I assume this Godking's going to be very different based on just the things I know about them so far. But yes, we have the returned. The returns are shrouded in mystery already, and we're going to get to them. But what I want to talk about is the several characters that we've met so far, where I think they're going to go, and where I think this universe is going to go as well. So I'm actually going to start with Lightsong, and Lightsong has been really fun to read so far. His nonchalant, if not indifferent, attitude towards himself and his god role, plus those around him, has been refreshing. And I say refreshing, I've only just started the book, but it's been fun to read. It's been good. It's not often that characters come like that, and it's very different to what we got in those first Mistborn books, where everybody seemed to care a lot about what was going on straight away. They were larger than life and they had missions. This guy, I'm sure he's going to get a mission, of course, but right now he's really just lazing his way through life, and there's so much to unpack about these returned. My first prediction is, though, of course he's going to be radicalized in some way. He's going to find out something about his own past, which he's not allowed to be told anything about. Like, he was told he died of a stomachache. I wholly believe that is untrue. And we know something about commands, and we know that he commands, I think it's a quarter of the Titalir, I don't know if it's pronounced that way, Titalir's army. And he sees it as a burden and an inconvenience right now. But I think long term, when he becomes radicalized, really, if you control 1/4 of the army, you have a big say in what happens in the city. So I know that that's definitely going to be turned on the rest of the army, or at the very least, told not to do something that the rest of the army is told to do. So that's my very first prediction. Next up is that his visions, of course, will unveil the truth. And that's not a difficult prediction to come to. I'm sure all of you thought exactly the same thing. But the big thing I'm trying to figure out is, what is the secret of the Returned and the Godking? Why are they keeping them alive, number one? Maybe that's just a simple, like, military idea, although it does, you have to sacrifice one breath a week per god. If they truly have all of these, big powers, then they're an unequaled military might around the world, and that's a small price to pay to be able to be the #1 country or area because you have the returns. But I actually think that their priests, I think it's called their priests, I think their priests are actually in control of things. We haven't met the God King, so I don't know. Maybe I'm completely wrong and the God King really is running everything. But I think the priests are using the returned for something, and we haven't quite figured it out yet. Maybe the returned are going to give us an insight or a vision because we're waiting for some kind of dream or vision. And his priest, Lightsong's priest, was very, very interested in these visions and showing him paintings that might jerk a memory. I think they're trying to figure out like how they came back or why they came back, and they're going to harness that information for themselves. I don't think they truly believe that the returned are gods. I think that, well, maybe most of the population does, but I think that a small section, most likely some of the priests, are using the returned to discover something else. And I know that's a relatively weak prediction, but I just feel that they're not actually running things. It's a different political factor, and I would think it's going to be the priests, and we're trying to harvest some kind of secret from the returned so that the regular person or the priests can utilize that secret for a much greater end. And that brings me on to the God King. Right now, Ciri is kneeling. She is being stubborn and deciding to kneel for as long as possible. And we're about to meet the God King. I think she got eye contact with him one time. And I'm trying to figure out, I really like Ciri already. She seems like a great character. I'm trying to figure out whether one of two things is going to happen. Is it going to be a Beauty and the Beast scenario where it turns out the God King's not as bad as everybody thought? He's just misunderstood and there's a big secret behind him, and maybe he's even going to be part of the revolution. Maybe he's a slave in his own palace. Or is he truly going to be a menace? Is he truly going to be evil and he's truly running things? And it's hard for me to say. I'm kind of leaning more towards that he's being used for something else. But I have no idea why I think that. And I don't know what I'd prefer in the story. I don't know if I'd prefer Ciri to have this weird relationship with the God King where she's just carrying his child potentially and she's allowed to free roam and do whatever she wants, or because then she would obviously meet up with Lightsong and potentially Vasher as well, and begin the crusade of rebellion, even though she's going to be inside of the belly of the beast. That would be an interesting dynamic. Or maybe we get a dynamic where her and the God King truly fall in love with each other somehow, and we really see her like unravel the secrets, but on a much more intimate level with the God King and those around him. Maybe she has to gain his trust, and I don't know how close I want her to be to the God King for the entirety of the story, because it really would depend on the secrets that he has, and I would guess that they are numerous. But one thing I know for sure is that the fact that she can grow her hair, or maybe even command her hair without talking or using any breaths, like that's quite cool. We haven't seen anybody be able to make something unnatural happen without it being a command. So I would guess that that's what she's doing. And the ability to change the color of her hair in a world where color is so important. There's something extremely important with her mating with the God King. And I don't know if the God King was the one who set that up. I feel like the mixture between the returned and then maybe this ability to command, like grow her hair and change the color of her hair, will create a very, very potent creature in the offspring between them two. I also think that Ciri's sister's coming to town. I think that she's also very interestingly set up. She's been set up as this wife to the God King for the entire duration, and then her father just very cruelly sent Ciri instead, which makes me think two things. One, maybe her father does have a different plan, and maybe this was planned out. I hope it was, because otherwise it's a very cowardly move from him to change his mind last minute. And two, her sister, and I can't remember her sister's name, I think it's like Vivienne potentially, is either going to end up running the country where they're from, or she's going to end up coming to town, and maybe Ciri does have that really close relationship with the God King, and that's the entirety of her story is going to be, wrapped up in close relations with him, which would be interesting to read. And maybe Vivienne comes into town and is the one who links up with Lightsong and Vasher and really pushes that storyline along. But I think either way, I'd be very interested in learning a lot more about if her name is Vivienne, her sister. And then we also know that they have other brothers and sisters as well, some of which are priests. And how do the priests tie in? Well, I don't know. How does Austere, the god of colors, tie in? I would guess the priest and Austere, god of colors, kind of come to some kind of, there's some kind of revelation over there. Again, a very vague prediction, but I don't have a bunch to go off of. And if you can probably tell, like, I'm just excited about this book. This one, I think this one, based on only the first 87 pages, has definitely got me more hooked than Mistborn did, which took me a little while to get into. And what of Vasher? Well, Vasher seems an interesting character. He obviously has a long and bloody backstory. I think through him we're going to learn a lot about magic, and I would guess that himself and Lightsong link up first out of everybody. And obviously something that's very interesting is Nightblood. So Nightblood is a real deep shade of black, if I'm not mistaken. I would guess because colours are really important, white and black are going to become extremely important because they're polar opposites. But I hope we learn more about that. But one thing I would guess is, so Nightblood seems to have a personality. It's obviously able to move around and think for itself. The only way, based on the limited information I have so far, that I think that might happen is maybe someone breathed so many breaths into this sword that it became a human almost. It became personified because of how much life force was put into it, and now it's just its own thing. It has like unlimited breaths in it. Not a fully formed thought, again based on little clues, but that's like a prediction I have for Nightblood. It's going to be obviously way more than a sword. It has direction, it knows where it wants to go and what it wants to achieve, and I would guess that's because it maybe even one person's life force got transferred into the blade, potentially, something along those lines. So that's it. That's what I've got so far. Please come along with me on this journey if you're a Cosmere fan, or if you're just a fan of watching me read these books and try and predict. I think I'm going to split this book probably into like 4, maximum 5 sections. I'd like to do it in less, but obviously life is busy. I didn't even manage to get changed out of my work clothes this time, so we'll see how much I get through it, but I'm very motivated to read this one. It's been a fantastic start, and I hope you come with me. I'd love to hear your comments on my predictions so far. Thank you.